Imagine you are walking into what you think is just a standard rescue mission, right?
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah, so you spent a decade preparing for this. You are completely armed to the teeth. I'm talking a shotgun, a machete, and, enough pent-up rage to fuel a small city.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. So you
Yeah.
kick down the doors of this pristine Manhattan penthouse, expecting to find, the usual assortment of human traffickers or mobsters or whatever.
The standard bad guys.
Exactly. You take aim, you pull the trigger, you score a direct hit. And the target, they just simply pick their own head off the floor.
Oh, my God.
Right, they pop it back onto their neck, and then they just calmly ask you if you'd like a cup of tea.
That is just, it's so wild.
It is the exact, absurd, incredibly blood-soaked premise we are plunging into today. Welcome to the deep dive. You and I are going to wade into one of the most chaotic cinematic experiments of the entire year.
It really is an anomaly. We're not just looking at a standard movie here. We're looking at something that defies a lot of conventional industry logic.
Yeah. Absolutely. And our roadmap for this, for you listening at home, includes a stack of incredibly diverse sources. We're pulling from festival dispatches from Bloody Disgusting and Awards Watch. We're poring over this massive production breakdown from Daily Bloid, analyzing a very telling bulletin from Film Music Reporter.
We even have the Wikipedia page in there.
Yeah, the official Wikipedia page. And we are even going to dissect this surprisingly vicious debate that erupted on Reddit regarding international censorship.
It gives us a very complete, multi-dimensional view of the film.
And that anomaly we're talking about is They Will Kill You, the brand new, wildly anticipated 2026 horror action comedy that just completely decimated audiences at South by Southwest.
People were losing their minds over it.
They really were. So here is our mission for you on this deep dive. We're going to unpack how a single 94-minute movie manages to smash together the gritty, hyper-violent aesthetics of 1970s grindhouse cinema.
And the incredibly slick choreography of high-budget modern action.
Yes, and the delightfully unhinged tropes of Satanic horror. We want to give you the ultimate shortcut to understanding the mechanics behind this film. Like, how does it work? Why does it work? And why is literally everyone talking about it?
It's the question of the month, really.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand why this movie is generating so much heat, we have to start with how it completely weaponizes audience expectations.
It really plays with what you think you're going to see.
Right. The sources lay out a narrative hook that, honestly, it initially sounds like a paint-by-numbers thriller. We meet Asia Reeves, a young woman with a criminal record who answers a classified ad to be a housekeeper at this monolithic luxury high-rise called The Virgil.
It sounds like a conventional psychological thriller about class dynamics, The vulnerable worker stepping into the lion's den.
Totally. You expect a very specific type of movie.
Yeah. But what the Awards Watch review highlights so effectively is the emotional engine driving the protagonist. Because Asia is not just answering this ad for a paycheck.
Right, there's a whole backstory.
Exactly. The film opens with this notoriously grim sequence establishing that years ago, Asia abandoned her little sister, Maria, to their abusive father.
Which is incredibly heavy for an action comedy.
It is. And that single act of self-preservation led Asia down a dark path, eventually landing her in jail. So she has spent the last 10 years entirely consumed by guilt, just tracking Maria's last known whereabouts.
Which, of course, brings her straight to the polished brass doors of the Virgil. She knows her sister is trapped in this building somewhere.
And because she assumes she is walking into a den of, incredibly wealthy garden-variety predators.
She comes heavily armed.
Very heavily armed.
She's packing a shotgun and a machete right there in her cleaning cart. But the twist, the major bait and switch that had those festival crowds screaming is that the Virgil isn't run by mobsters at all.
No, it's something much, much weirder.
It is run by a satanic cult of elite, ultra-wealthy tenants who perform monthly human sacrifices. And as the new housekeeper, Asia is scheduled to be this month's main event.
The cult completely believes they have trapped this helpless, isolated maid. They think they are the hunters.
Right. They think it's business as usual.
But instead, they have locked themselves inside a skyscraper with a heavily armed, highly motivated woman who has absolutely nothing to lose.
It's such a brilliant inversion of the whole slasher dynamic. The final girl isn't running away, she is actively hunting the monsters.
But the movie takes it one massive leap further. Because Asia is hunting them, she manages to take one down almost immediately.
She gets a kill in the first act.
Yeah, and that is when she realizes the true nature of the trap.
Which is where things get completely absurd.
Exactly. The dark worship of these elite tenants has actually yielded results. They have achieved immortality.
Which changes everything.
The Awards Watch piece notes that if Asia decapitates one of these cultists with her machete, the severed head will just, graphically and casually roll back and reconnect to the stump.
Ew, that's so gross, but so funny.
The flesh literally knits itself back together. And this singular narrative choice utterly detonates the traditional stakes of a single location thriller.
Because it's no longer a survival movie.
Right. It becomes a body count movie where the antagonists literally cannot permanently die.
It is the most absurd mechanical problem you could hand a protagonist. It's like showing up to a haunted house with a bazooka, only to find out all the ghosts are wearing Kevlar.
That's a great way to put it.
But I am going to challenge the brilliance of this for a second, just looking at it from a structural storytelling perspective.
Okay, let's hear it.
If your enemies literally cannot be killed, doesn't that fundamentally strip away all the tension? Like, if the audience knows the bad guy's just going to get back up 5 seconds after being shot, how does the protagonist actually achieve victory? Where is the dramatic weight in that?
I see what you're saying.
It sounds like playing a video game with the cheat codes on, but you gave the cheat codes to the villains.
Right. But that assumes tension can only be derived from mortality. What's fascinating here is how the film anticipates that exact critique and completely shifts the goalposts.
How so?
It uses immortality not to build traditional brooding horror dread, but to construct a playground. The tension shifts from, will she survive this fight, to how on earth is she going to temporarily incapacitate this unkillable obstacle just so she can get to the elevator?
Oh, I see. So it becomes more of a puzzle box.
Exactly. A highly violent puzzle box. The dread isn't about death anymore. It's about exhaustion.
Because she's still human.
Precisely. How long can a mortal woman maintain the physical stamina to keep hacking apart immortal bodies before her own muscles just give out?
Wow, that completely shifts the genre.
It really does.
Yeah.
It moves from a horror thriller into this high-octane endurance test. The immortality forces the protagonist, and frankly the filmmakers, to be wildly creative with the choreography.
Because a simple bullet to the head just doesn't solve the problem anymore.
Right. You have to invent new ways to slow them down.
Which brings us to the actual aesthetic of that violence. Because if you have immortal enemies who keep getting back up over and over, you are committing to a staggering amount of repetitive combat.
You are. It could get boring very quickly if not handled right.
Let's look at the spectacle of it. How does the director, Kirill Sokolov, portray this endless cycle of bodily destruction without completely exhausting the viewer or just numbing them to the action?
He leans entirely into a subgenre that Bloody Disgusting perfectly categorizes as splatstick.
Splatstick. Splatter and slapstick.
Exactly. It is the precise intersection of extreme splatter horror and slapstick comedy. When you push violence past the point of realism,
Like way past it.
way past, when you have gallons of blood hitting the ceiling and bodies being mangled and then immediately reforming, the human brain actually stops processing it as trauma.
It becomes absurd.
Right. It starts processing it as physical comedy. The review draws a direct and very flattering line between this film and Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2.
Oh man, the visual references that critics are throwing out are just incredible. They describe blood squirting in this hilarious water sprinkler fashion.
Hilarious water sprinkler fashion.
If you're listening to this, you know exactly what that looks like. It immediately calls to mind the House of Blue Leaf sequence in Tarantino's Kill Bill.
Where the gore is just so exaggerated.
Right. It's so geyser-like that it becomes an operatic dance rather than a gruesome murder.
And Sokolov isn't just mimicking Tarantino either. The reviews highlight how he prevents the repetitive nature of this immortal combat from getting stale.
How does he do that?
By constantly shifting the visual language of the fights. So one sequence is this homage to fluid anime swordplay.
Oh, nice.
Then the next room turns into a gritty, close-quarters spaghetti western shootout. And it shifts again into a heavily stylized martial arts brawl.
That's brilliant.
He's basically cycling through the entire cinematic history of violence just to keep the audience off balance.
But the thing that really caught my eye in the Awards Watch breakdown is the praise for the cinematographer, Isaac Bowman.
Oh, his work here sounds phenomenal.
It does. Because in so many modern action movies, Directors hide the fact that their actors aren't actually martial artists by using the shaky cam technique.
Right, the Bourne Identity style.
Yeah, they throw the camera around, they cut 14 times in a single second, and it creates this chaotic blur where you literally can't tell who is hitting whom.
It's disorienting.
It really is. But Bauman completely rejects that.
He does, and it's a massive risk on his part. The reviews specifically compare the visual clarity of They Will Kill You to the John Wick franchise.
That is high praise.
Very high. Bauman relies on sweeping, incredibly confident wide shots.
Explain to the listener why that is such a massive risk mechanically. Like, why don't more directors just use wide shots if it looks better?
Simply put, a wide shot leaves you absolutely nowhere to hide.
Right. Everything is visible.
Exactly. If a punch misses by 6 inches, the audience sees the gap. If an actor forgets their blocking and hesitates for even half a second, the entire take is completely ruined.
You have to start over from the beginning.
Yep. Shooting highly complex, multi-person choreography in a wide, unbroken take requires weeks and weeks of rigorous physical rehearsal.
It requires actors who are practically stunt performers themselves.
It really does. It demands a level of geometric precision on set that is incredibly expensive and time-consuming to achieve. So by choosing wide shots, Sokolov and Bauman are signaling to the audience that they have absolute confidence in their choreography.
And what they are showcasing in those wide shots are practical effects, which is so refreshing.
Right.
This isn't just a CGI bloodfest created in a server room 6 months after the actors went home.
No, they actually built the gags on set.
The Bloody Disgusting review absolutely raves about the makeup department, and they single out this very specific cheeky sequence involving a renegade eyeball.
A renegade eyeball.
I don't even want to know the physics of how an eyeball goes rogue in a fight scene. But the fact that they built a physical prop to achieve that effect just makes it so much more tactile.
There's a weight to practical gore that CGI simply cannot replicate. Your brain knows when an object is actually in the room with the actor.
Exactly. However, we do need to look at the collateral damage of committing this heavily to style, because both major reviews pointed out a significant thematic shortcoming.
It's true. When a film dedicates this much runtime and energy to complex splat-stick choreography, the narrative depth usually suffers.
The world building takes a major hit.
Precisely. The Daily Bloid production notes reveal that the production designer, Jeremy Reed, conceptually built the Virgil high-rise to represent the 9 circles of hell.
Which is such a cool concept.
It is. The architecture of the building itself is supposed to be this literal descent into the inferno, which is a phenomenal premise. But the critics note that the film is moving at such a breakneck, adrenaline-fueled pace that this world building remains strictly surface level. The camera literally never pauses long enough for the audience to actually explore those devilish floors.
That's a shame. And the social commentary is pretty thin, too, according to the reviews.
Yeah, they mentioned that.
The central conflict is a building run by ultra-wealthy, white, immortal elites who exploit a working-class staff made up entirely of people of color. The reviews point out that the movie relies on a very basic, very loud, "eat the rich" slogan.
It's not exactly subtle.
Not at all. It doesn't offer a nuanced critique of modern economic disparity. It literally just uses class warfare as an excuse to rev up the chainsaw.
Which leads to the inevitable critical debate. Does the film fail because it lacks substance, or does it succeed because it never promised any in the first place?
See, I have to side with the film on this one. Yeah, I mean, if you buy a ticket for a movie literally titled "They Will Kill You," and the poster features a woman in a blood-soaked maid's uniform holding a machete, you are not walking into the theater expecting a delicate philosophical treatise on socioeconomic mobility.
That's fair.
You are paying for the renegade eyeball. Championing style over substance isn't a flaw if the style is the entire point of the exercise.
I see the logic there, but consider the alternative for a second. The greatest genre films, you think of Jordan Peele's Get Out or Bong Joon-ho's Parasite.
Masterpieces.
They managed to deliver massive cinematic thrills while simultaneously layering in profound social critique. They use the tropes of the genre as a Trojan horse for deeper meaning.
Right. They sneak the medicine in with the sugar.
Exactly. They Will Kill You seemingly abandons the Trojan horse entirely and just charges the gates head on. It succeeds wildly as an adrenaline delivery system, but it perhaps misses the opportunity to be something more resonant.
Okay, that is a fair distinction. But to make that adrenaline delivery system work, to execute this level of highly stylized, incredibly physical splat-stick comedy, You need a very specific caliber of actor.
You absolutely do.
You need performers who understand how to play the absolute life-or-death reality of a scene while simultaneously, winking at the audience through the sheer absurdity of their physical movements.
A very fine line to walk.
Which brings us to the ensemble cast.
And the undisputed center of gravity in this ensemble is Zazie Beetz, playing Asia Reeves.
The reviews are practically vibrating with praise for her. Bloody Disgusting noted that she takes this maximalist, stunt-heavy romp right by the throat.
She owns it.
We were just talking about how the director refuses to use quick cuts, which means the physical burden of this movie falls squarely on Beetz's shoulders. She isn't just delivering dialogue, she is executing grueling, unbroken martial arts sequences.
The physicality described in the sources is immense. She is fighting barefoot, often in her pajamas, and just taking massive amounts of physical battering from enemies who literally don't feel pain.
It sounds exhausting just to watch.
But the Awards Watch review makes a really crucial observation here. Her true brilliance in the film isn't just her fighting form, it is her reaction to the madness.
Yes, grounding the absurdity.
Exactly. When you introduce a supernatural element like immortality into a grounded, gritty setting, the audience needs a proxy.
Someone to say, are you seeing this too?
Right. They need someone on screen to mirror their own disbelief. Imagine putting a machete through someone's neck and watching the wound close up. If the character accepts it too quickly, the audience just checks out.
Because it breaks the reality of the world.
Beetz manages to effortlessly project this visceral, exhausted disbelief. She grounds the supernatural comedy in very real human frustration.
If you look at her career trajectory, this role makes perfect sense as her evolution. She has always been the most magnetic person in the room, but usually in a supporting capacity.
She always steals the scene.
She really does. She earned an Emmy nomination for playing Van in Donald Glover's Atlanta, where she was the grounded emotional core amidst all that surreal comedy.
She was fantastic in that.
And she was the impossibly lucky mutant Domino in Deadpool 2, proving she could handle massive action set pieces. She was in the Joker films. She knows how to exist in heightened, bizarre cinematic universes.
But here, she is the unequivocal lead. She is carrying the entire narrative architecture on her back.
And doing it effortlessly, it sounds like.
Our sources note that They Will Kill You is cementing an incredible hot streak for her. Her last 4 consecutive movies have all been certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, including a recent highly rated project called Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die.
That's quite a title.
Right. And the early box office tracking suggests this might crack her top 10 highest grossing films.
Which is an astonishing feat for an R-rated, ultra-violent horror comedy. But she isn't alone in this high rise. She is surrounded by a supporting cast that sounds absolutely unhinged.
The casting directors build a fascinating tapestry of talent here. Heather Graham is repeatedly singled out by the festival critics as the major scene stealer.
Heather Graham.
Yeah, she plays an effervescent, deeply committed cult acolyte named Sharon.
The idea of Heather Graham doing physical splatstick comedy is so unexpected to me. The reviews note that her character takes and dishes out staggering amounts of pain, getting progressively more annoyed every time Asia, quote-unquote, kills her.
Just minor inconveniences, right?
Exactly. And then, anchoring the top of the hierarchy, you have Academy Award winner Patricia Arquette.
Arquette plays Lily Woodhouse, the steely, immaculately dressed building superintendent.
I can picture it perfectly.
She initially presents herself as a maternal figure taking Asia under her wing, which makes the eventual reveal of her role in the Satanic cult all the more jarring.
She's so good at playing those dual roles.
Arquette is an actor who can deliver completely unhinged dialogue with absolute terrifying sincerity, which is exactly what a movie like this requires to keep from spinning off its axis entirely.
But the eclectic nature of the cast is what really stands out in the Daily Bloyd breakdown. You have Tom Felton playing a cult member named Kevin.
Draco Malfoy himself.
Yes. You have Mihala, who is brilliant in the incredibly tense HBO finance drama industry, playing the missing sister Maria. And you have Patterson Joseph in a central role.
Such a varied group.
Think about the meta text of this casting. You take Tom Felton, an actor whose entire childhood career was defined by playing the embodiment of inherited elitist arrogance in the Harry Potter franchise.
And you cast him as an immortal, ultra-wealthy elite sacrificing the working class.
It is brilliant shorthand.
It really is. When the script is moving too fast to provide deep psychological backstories for every single villain, you rely on the cultural baggage the actors bring with them.
You see his face and you just know.
The audience looks at Felton and immediately understands the exact flavor of entitlement his character possesses. The casting does the heavy lifting for the screenwriters.
So we have this wild premise, we have the genre-bending tone, and we have an ensemble cast perfectly calibrated to deliver it. It's like the casting director invited people from entirely different cinematic universes and threw them into a blender set to Satanic panic.
That's exactly what it feels like.
So let's look at the machinery behind the camera. How do you actually build this blood-soaked 94-minute blender?
The architect of this chaos is Russian filmmaker Kirill Sokolov. According to the Wikipedia and Daily Boyd sources, he co-wrote the script with Alex Litvak.
Litvak, he's known for the 2010 sci-fi action film Predators, right?
Exactly. But what is so remarkable about this project is that They Will Kill You is actually Sokolov's first English-language feature film.
Wow, that is a staggering amount of pressure. To step into the English language market and immediately be handed a massive ensemble cast and a highly technical, stunt-heavy production.
It's a huge leap. But he earned that trust through his previous work, specifically a chaotic Russian action comedy called Why Don't You Just Die?
I've heard of that one. It's supposed to be wild.
It served as his calling card. It proved he could orchestrate hyperkinetic, confined space action with a very dark sense of humor. And that specific skill set caught the attention of some very heavy hitters in Hollywood.
And this is where the industry politics get really interesting. For you listening, They Will Kill You is the very first release under a brand new horror label called Nocturna.
Nocturna, yes.
If you keep track of industry power players, Nocturna was launched by the sibling duo Andy and Barbara Muschietti. They are the director-producer team behind the massive, record-breaking It franchise for Warner Bros.
The Muschiettis understand the mechanics of blockbuster horror better than almost anyone working today. And they, in partnership with New Line Cinema and Skydance, threw significant financial weight behind Sokolov.
How significant?
The Daily Boyd breakdown estimates the production budget at a robust $80 million.
$80 million. Let's just pause on that number for a second, because in the context of horror, that is a massive sum.
Huge.
Most single-location horror movies are shot for under $10 million. Giving an $80 million budget to an R-rated, gore-heavy movie about immortal Satanists is a massive show of confidence.
It really is.
How exactly do you spend $80 million on a movie set inside one building?
You spend it on control. The movie is set entirely in the claustrophobic confines of a Manhattan high-rise, but they didn't shoot a single frame of this film in New York City.
Really? Not a single frame?
The Daily Boyd source confirms that the entire production was relocated to Cape Town, South Africa. They shot there from August to December of 2024.
Why Cape Town? Is it just for the tax incentives? I know a lot of productions go there for that.
The tax rebates are a massive factor, yes. South Africa offers incredibly competitive incentives for international productions. But it is also about infrastructure.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Cape Town has massive world-class sound stages. If you shoot in an actual high-rise in New York, you are entirely at the mercy of the location.
Right. You can't just tear the building apart.
Exactly. You can't knock down walls, you can't install complex wire rigs in the ceiling for stunt work, and you certainly can't spray hundreds of gallons of fake blood on expensive Manhattan real estate.
The landlords would not be thrilled.
They would not. So they built the Virgil from scratch.
Completely from scratch.
Completely. Production designer Jeremy Reed utilized those South African sound stages to construct a meticulously detailed, multi-level environment.
That explains the budget.
Yeah, the sources describe massive sets featuring a very oppressive red-dominant color palette with endless eerie corridors that directly reference Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Oh, I love a good Shining reference.
By building it on a stage, they could design the walls to break apart exactly where the stunt team needed them to. They could hide the compressed air cannons used for the splat-stick blood effects seamlessly into the architecture.
That's brilliant.
They essentially spent $80 million to build a bespoke, highly functional pressure cooker.
And the atmosphere inside that pressure cooker isn't just visual, it's sonic too. The Film Music Reporter Bulletin provides a fascinating detail about how this movie sounds, because the original score is composed by Carlos Rafael Rivera.
Securing Rivera for this project is a massive coup. He is an Emmy and Grammy-winning composer.
His resume is incredible.
It really is. Audiences will know his incredibly lush, complex orchestrations from prestige television projects like The Queen's Gambit, the comedy series Hacks, and the drama lessons in chemistry.
He is the literal definition of a prestige composer, which makes his involvement in a movie described as gonzo splatstick so intriguing to me.
It is a study in counterpoint. When you have visuals that are aggressively lowbrow.
Like a renegade eyeball being sliced in half.
Exactly. Pairing that imagery with heavy metal or generic horror synth just makes the scene feel cheap. But if you score that exact same geyser of blood with a soaring, operatic, classically orchestrated piece of music, you completely elevate the violence.
You create this brilliant dissonance.
It tells the audience, yes, this is absurd, but it is beautifully constructed absurdity.
And the music is getting a major standalone push, too. Water Tower Music is releasing the digital soundtrack on March 20. And Waxwork Records, who are absolute legends in the horror community for their physical releases, they are putting out a special edition vinyl.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating. You look at the whole board. You have an $80 million budget. You have an Oscar-winning actress in Patricia Arquette. You have a Grammy-winning composer in Rivera.
It's an A-list lineup.
You have the producers behind the highest-grossing horror movie of all time backing a meticulous, custom-built set in Cape Town.
Yeah.
They took a concept that really belongs in a midnight grindhouse theater, and they dressed it in a bespoke Italian suit.
It is the gentrification of the B-movie. They are proving that high-concept trash, when executed with absolute A-list craftsmanship, becomes undeniable cinematic art.
And the gamble seems to be paying off wildly.
It really does. Which leads us to the final piece of this puzzle. The reception, the ratings, and the cultural zeitgeist. The movie hits theaters wide on March 27, riding a massive wave of hype out of its SXSW premiere. So how is the public actually digesting this level of stylized carnage?
The critical consensus is remarkably strong. Based on the aggregate of early festival reviews, the film is sitting at a very healthy 76% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's great for this genre.
And Awards Watch awarded it a solid B-plus grade. For a film that relies this heavily on gore and physical comedy, genres that mainstream critics notoriously turn their noses up at, those numbers are complete triumph.
Yet, the extreme violence triggered a fascinating secondary conversation, which we watched play out in real time on a dedicated Reddit thread. And this debate highlights some incredible cultural differences in how different nations classify and consume media. Let's look at the international age rating debate.
Okay, so in the United States, there was never any doubt. The Motion Picture Association, the MPA, slapped it with a hard R rating.
I mean, naturally.
Their justification cited strong bloody violence, gore, and language. The American system is notoriously puritanical about sex, but when it comes to violence, it operates on a very strict volume metric.
What do you mean, a volume metric?
Like, if the literal volume of blood on screen exceeds a certain threshold, it gets an R, regardless of the context.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
But the Reddit thread was entirely populated by fans in the United Kingdom who were engaged in this fierce, highly analytical debate over what their classification board, the BBFC, would rate the film.
Right. In the UK, the debate was whether it would receive a 15 rating, meaning you must be 15 to see it, or a restrictive 18 rating, which is strictly for adults.
And the arguments were rooted in deep film theory. Several users argued that the BBFC would grant it a 15 rating precisely because of the slapstick nature of the violence.
Because it's not realistic.
Exactly. The UK board often considers the tone and the realism of the gore, because the violence in They Will Kill You is so stylized, so exaggerated, and involves immortal beings. It is clearly detached from reality.
It's cartoonish.
It doesn't depict imitable, realistic violence that teenagers might actually try to replicate. Therefore, the absurdity mitigates the psychological trauma, allowing for a lower age rating.
It's the difference between showing a gritty, realistic stabbing in an alleyway versus a Looney Tunes character getting hit with an anvil. Even if the anvil causes a geyser of blood, the context is comedic.
Right. But other users in the thread strongly disagreed with that.
Oh, they definitely did.
They pointed to neighboring classification boards for proof. They highlighted that the Irish classification board, the IFCO, hit the film with a strict 16 rating.
And the Irish board's descriptive warning was really intense. They cited bloody, gory action violence with graphic injury detail, depiction of self-harm.
That specific phrase, graphic injury detail, is the major sticking point for the Reddit debaters. Many believe that regardless of the comedic tone, the sheer visceral detail of the practical makeup effects would force the BDFC to give it an 18.
Because even if it's an immortal head getting chopped off, it still looked like a real head getting chopped off. Ultimately, though, a user in the thread triumphantly confirmed that the BBFC settled on a 15 rating, which is such a fascinating cultural irony. I have to quote one of the Reddit users who perfectly summarized the absurdity of international censorship.
Let's hear it.
They wrote, "In the US, you can join the military and go to war years before you can legally drink a beer, but in the UK, you can legally drink years before you are allowed to see a scary movie."
That is a hilarious observation, but it underscores a massive victory for Warner Bros.
How so?
Securing a 15 rating in the UK opens the film up to a massive teenage demographic. The studio knew exactly what line they were walking, and they balanced the gore with just enough comedy to slip past the international censors.
And Warner Bros. Desperately needs this to hit. Though to be fair, they are currently experiencing an unprecedented hot streak in the horror genre. They are completely dominating the conversation right now.
They are operating at a completely different level. Our sources note their recent triumphs. They just took home 4 Academy Awards for the Horror Film Centers and another Oscar for Amy Madigan's performance in Weapons.
Which is huge for horror at the Oscars.
It's extremely rare. And on the commercial popcorn cinema side, their recent release Final Destination Bloodlines shattered expectations, becoming the highest grossing and highest rated installment in that entire decades-old franchise.
And They Will Kill You isn't just riding the studio's hot streak. It is tapping into a very specific, very timely micro-trend in horror right now. We are seeing a sudden explosion of what you could call the wedding or wealthy cult survival subgenre.
Yes, that is definitely a trend.
The Daily Bloy piece draws a direct comparison between this film and another major release dropping right around the same time. Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, starring Samara Weaving.
It is definitely not a coincidence that multiple studios are greenlighting films featuring young, working-class women forced to violently dismantle a secretive cabal of wealthy elites.
It's in the air.
Horror has always been a mirror for societal anxieties. In 2026, with inflation, housing crises, and massive wealth disparity completely dominating the news cycle, audiences are craving a very specific type of catharsis.
Watching a housekeeper take a machete to a penthouse full of untouchable billionaires is the ultimate cinematic pressure release valve.
It's the gig economy finally fighting back.
That is perfectly put. Well, we have covered a massive amount of ground today, unpacking the mechanics of a truly bizarre piece of cinema. Let's synthesize this deep dive for you, the listener. They Will Kill You is a relentless 94-minute masterclass in physical comedy, practical gore, and genre subversion.
It really is.
Under the incredibly confident direction of Kirill Sokolov, it takes the aesthetic of Sam Raimi's splatter films, the choreography of John Wick, and the claustrophobia of a single Manhattan high-rise and mashes them into a brilliantly executed thrill ride.
And while critics might argue that its eat-the-rich messaging lacks philosophical depth, the film compensates with an absolute dedication to its own style.
It knows exactly what it is.
Driven by a grueling, star-making physical performance from Zazie Beetz, and backed by an $80 million production that utilized world-class practical effects and a Grammy-winning score, it proves that silly cinema requires profound artistry to execute correctly.
It really does take a lot of hard work to make something look this effortless.
In an era where prestige films are increasingly heavy, self-serious, and frankly exhausting, there is immense value in a movie that simply wants to be a wildly entertaining communal theater experience.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive by talking about the unexpected, the feeling of pulling the trigger and watching your target put their head back on.
A feeling we all know too well.
Right. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, circling back to that exact twist. The critics knocked the film for relying on a shallow "eat the rich" slogan.
They did.
But take a moment and really think about the metaphor of the villain's immortality. The elite cultists in this high-rise literally cannot die. If you cut off their heads, they simply reattach. If you shoot them, they heal.
They are untouchable.
If the central metaphor of your movie is that the ultra-wealthy elite are an immortal, self-healing organism, and no matter how fiercely the working-class protagonist fights back, no matter how many weapons she brings to the fight, she can only temporarily inconvenience them.
Oh, wow.
Is this movie actually a lighthearted splatstick comedy? Or is the idea that the 1% literally cannot be dismantled the most terrifying, grimly accurate reflection of modern economic inequality we've seen on screen this year?
That completely reframes the narrative. It suggests that the comedy is just a coping mechanism for an unwinnable war.
It really is.
It is a profoundly dark thought to leave on, but a fitting one for a film that refuses to let its monsters stay dead.
Definitely something to chew on the next time you browse the classifieds. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into They Will Kill You. We hope this shortcut through the sources gave you a new appreciation for the bloody mechanics of modern genre blending. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. See you next time.